Imagine spawning into your newly created game, playing with things that you've added like cars, gears, and NPCs to interact with. But then you notice something strange, something that you don't remember adding to your game. This is Roblox House Encounter. It is a relatively unknown Roblox ARG that I've only seen one person really talk about. Created by Aftony2, it ran from December 22nd of 2022 to a year later in 2023. There are a total of 7 entries in this ARG, the final video being a full recap of the series, and it's described as a more polished state, according to its creator. Without further ado, let us begin with the first entry of the ARG, First House Sighting. The first entry opens as I already explained. Our player joins the game he has recently made. We know he's made this game by the description, but we'll get into that later. He plays around with the things he's added, then eventually he notices something in the distance. It's a house, a very tall house, that seems to be a stretched out version of the Roblox Happy Home. The player then walks around for his game for a bit. I'm guessing he's wondering how that mysterious house ended up in his game. After this, our player ends his recording, bringing the first entry to a close. Going back to the description of the video, it reads, I do not recall adding that house in, letting us know 2 things. 1, this is his game that he created, and 2, and most obviously, he didn't add that thing here. Well, no shit. I think this is a great way to start the series. It's nothing crazy, just introduces what this whole ARG is about. Just a house that spawned in the player's Roblox game without his knowledge. Let us begin on the next ARG's entry, Domus. This entry is a short follow-up to what happened directly after the first sighting. The video is structured as an old slideshow from 2008. The player explains that after seeing the mysterious house, he went to check through Roblox Studio, stating, whatever that was, I do not recall putting it there. Looking at the models tab, he goes through and sees the things he put in the game. He sees the noob NPC, the billboard, and the Jeep. But then he notices something, a model named Domus Mundi. After doing some research, Domus Mundi is Latin for house/home of the world, thus relating to the house that he sees. When he tries to interact with the model, his computer glitches out, giving our player this reaction. As you could tell, he was terrified. He ends the video by saying, rate 5 stars, and that's it for our second entry. Domus Mundi seems to be pretty important with this house in the distance. After a good amount of research on this phrase, I found a couple of things. 1, according to Wikipedia, an idea of universal dominion developed by the Middle Ages. 2, a house/home of the world, like I've said before. And 3, the debut album by Holland Thon. I don't know why I put that in there. Now let's begin with the third entry, House Sighting 2. House Sighting 2 begins with messages between our player and I'm guessing his friend. He wants his friend to come check out the house he saw in his game in the first entry. His friend agrees and then they join his game. Upon joining, the house is still there, which his friend quickly takes notice of. They then have a conversation in the chat. A quick notice, the quality is like this on purpose, so you could barely see what they're saying. Thankfully, the creator has a transcript in the description. I will refer to our player as Aftony and his friend as his friend. I can't see his name at all. Check this out, says Aftony. This is that strange thing I told you about. What that? Says his friend. It looks like a house. It just appeared when I was testing my game out, says Aftony. Did you try removing it? Says his friend. I did, but the studio crashed. Weird. Do you know who uploaded this? Says his friend. I don't know, but I've been thinking of finding a way to explore the house. Then the video cuts, not letting him finish his sentence. But the video cuts to a fully white version of the house. With this, we get a closer look at what the house actually looks like. Like I've said before, the house is fully stretched out with super tall windows and doors. And that's where this entry comes to a close. This entry of the ARG just seems like a way of showing what Aftony will do in the next couple of days or entries. Just checking up on the house and trying to find a way to get to it. With all that being said, let us begin on the next entry, a visit to the house. Entry 4 opens with Aftony looking at the house with subtitles on the screen, saying that he's been checking on the house every day to monitor it and he barely plays other games anymore. In the description of the video, it says that this is 19 days after the first sighting. Later, he states, is it just me or is it getting closer and closer each time? If you compare the footage from the first entry, he's right. Another difference is that the game has been getting darker slowly and slowly since he first saw the house. The video then cuts to a title card reading, today I was welcomed. I paid the house a little visit. I'm not sure why he needed to say he was visiting the house. He's been doing the same thing for the past 19 days, but we move on. As we can see, the game has gotten a lot darker than before, but after taking a close look, Aftony notices something. It's a path. To check, he grabs his slingshot gear, and what do you know, there's a walkable path just barely visible. At this point in time, I wonder if that path was always there, but then I looked at the phrase, "Today I was welcomed," so I guess that explains it. Aftony then states, "It's obvious that the house wants me to go inside." Then, Aftony makes his way to the house. Upon reaching it, it's everything we described. A tall door, tall windows, and overall, just a tall house. He enters, the screen goes black, and he's teleported to this very dark area. In the background, it plays a very loud sound that seems to be like rushing water. Outside of the house are multiple versions of the house in a row, and there is water that goes up to the player's neck. He walks around for a bit, but then he mysteriously stops and ends the recording with a title card saying, "Out of all people, why me?" Then bringing entry 4 to a close. So far, this entry has had the most content in it. There are some things in this entry that I can't even explain, like why does the house want him to go inside, or why are there other houses? But we are nowhere close to finishing this ARG. Another thing that I've noticed in this video are the comments. The creator added a transcript of something that isn't in the video, a conversation between Aftony and his friend. The transcript goes like this: "Hey, are you okay? You're acting a little weird ever since you saw that weird house. I'm very concerned about you. Like, you barely went outside since you did this house monitoring bullshit," says his friend. "Your mind is not about that damn house in the middle of the ocean." Yeah. By the way, I got inside the house. It TP'd me to another place. Can you come join and visit it together? Aftony asks. ... Alright, from what I've read, this is a time script that takes place right after entry 4, and we've learned a lot more of what is happening to Aftony. He's becoming obsessed with this house. All he wants to do is uncover what is going on at the moment. It reminds me of Paul from Petscop, slowly creating an obsession with the mysteries of the game. With all that being said, let's move on to the next entry, Recognition and Speculations. Entry 5 is the second shortest in this ARG. The video begins with different evidence of the house, showing 3 different pictures and 3 different games. As it shows, Aftony isn't the only player being affected by this. And wait, that's work at a pizza place. He then checks the forums to see if anyone else is talking about this issue, and people are talking about it. People wonder why there's a house in their game, people complaining that they can't get access to their game because of it, and also people asking if it's a hack of some sort. In the description, it reads, "Amongst a wave of speculation, rumors believed of a group of explorers were into play for maliciously adding a mysterious house into every game on the platform, but all we know, this is not the case here. The reason why this couldn't be the case is because why would they choose to put a house if they had access to your game? It just doesn't really make sense." But then the video ends with something weird. It shows a comment reading, "This house is not connected to that house in the middle of the ocean, right?" Then showing this image. If we go back to the first episode of the series, in the description it reads, "Inspired by the house in the ocean, which is created by Mr. Manicore." I'm guessing that this image is a reference or from this analog horror video. Following this image, entry 5 comes to a close. This entry revealed that Aftony is not the only one being affected by this house. Multiple people are wondering what the hell is going on, but what I'm thinking about is, if it's not an exploit, then what is it? The house in our world begins with text flashing in the first frame of the video. It reads, "This recording has been interfered by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other similar government entities for investigation." This means that there is an investigation by the higher-ups in this matter. Upon joining, the game has become super dark since the last time he played, and something very weird that I noticed, the recording quality has gotten better. I can see the names of the players, chats, and other small details on the map. It's almost like Aftony isn't the one recording this, it's someone else. Looking at the house, it is pitch black and has grown tremendously. The noob NPC from before has now been renamed to Container, repeated multiple times. During this time, the players have been typing in chat about what they see. Something interesting is now you can hear typing from Aftony, which before wasn't being heard. Also, I think this proves even more that someone else is recording this, like they're watching them. They hop on a jeep to get to the house quicker. When they get to the house, the inside is huge. As they walk into the middle of the house, the screen goes black and they're teleported to the water area once again, but in a different location. They see the houses in the distance and decide to take a walk towards them. Eventually, they come across this. A crescent creature. These are entities that, according to the Mommyman Wiki, they are minor antagonists in the House in the Ocean series. There are mysterious creatures that begin appearing across the southwestern United States, and some way, somehow, they are in the Roblox client. Later, more text shows up on the screen reading, both victims are unaware of their incoming fate. Aftony and his friend approach a bunch of the Crescent creatures with a sword, and this is what follows. This media has been seized. A subtitle then shows up at the bottom reading, "They have become a container to the Crescent King," then bringing entry 6 to a close. This is by far the longest entry at 9 minutes long. The weirdest thing about this episode is how different it feels from the other entries. Before, the videos were edited as the person would have in 2008. I'm guessing edited by Aftony himself. But this video, it's edited like a video for evidence. This makes sense because of him before this recording has been interfered by blah 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 message. The friends also seem to be shaken up about this, stopping all chats once they get teleported to the water area. Going back to the phrase Domus Mundi, maybe this is the final form of the house of the phrase house and home of the world. My reason is that on the thumbnail it says Domus Mundi over the house, but that's just my speculation. This entry was amazing. Completely changing the subtle things of the episode was completely genius and made it all a lot better. Let's begin with the final standalone episode, The House in Our Mind. This entry begins with the same ending as last time, but shown on somebody's computer. Maybe it's Aftony's. But then the video cuts to the original house. This segment seems to be just explaining what's going on at the moment. It explains that there is no house shown in the gameplay and there wasn't even a game in the first place, which I find super interesting. It goes on to state that the backbone of Roblox is built off a string of codes and our reality works in the same way. Basic fundamentals of reality programmed and perceived by our mind. I have no idea what all that means. And a super interesting thing that was said was, if your eyes were to be hijacked, would you ever know? The more I thought about it, you wouldn't. Based on what we saw in the series, us and Aftony both saw that house in the distance and instantly believed that it was there. It goes on to explain the Crescent King by stating, by knowing about the house, you unwillingly invited the king into your mind, which is kinda weird. But the video ends with this. A crescent constellation was formed by the house, relaying a message to its kingdom, going back into space never to be seen again, thus bringing entry 7 to a close. This entry was very confusing to me. I don't really know how to explain it, to be honest. It hasn't answered any of the questions that I have been wondering, but maybe that's the point. Or maybe I'm just really stupid. But I will try my best with some of this episode. In the description it reads, only a mere Fata Morgana. A Fata Morgana is caused by the bending of light, which will create this really cool effect of a boat, for example, floating on the water. This 100% relates to the house in the distance. So I'm guessing that proves that the house is real? I don't know at all. But I still don't get the whole there is no house stuff. It's really confusing. This entry is very interesting. It's the whole ARG but with a more polished state, aka some more content to talk about. In between entries 6 and 7, it adds more footage in between them, stating that they found another folder by the name of Domus Mundi on the player launcher like we've seen before. In the said folder are many encrypted files, with the important one being called Secret Conference, which seems to be David Baszucki talking about the issue. After this, we get some news. A new video begins to play saying, do you want to know what happened to them? Then they show an article that talks about 2 teenagers who were hospitalized after severe seizures caused by a video game. Now we know what happened at the end of entry 6. It then goes on to state, his curiosity and obsession with him not only killed him, but brought his bystander to the lowest point of hell with him. This series was super interesting. If I had seen The House in the Ocean before this, I think I would have had a better understanding of it, but I still got a lot out of it. I could try to create a full story on what's going on in this ARG, but it gets to the point where sometimes I leave myself thinking of so many different possibilities. Looking back at entry 5, Recognition and Speculations, we see the house in multiple games. It's eerie to think about what happened to those teenagers, and I'm guessing the same fate will happen to the creators of these games also. My guess that when Aftony and his friend died, they became a container, like the noob NPC from The House in Our World, a container to the Crescent King. My closing question is the house real, or is it just the house in our minds? I think that's for you to decide. Thanks for watching.